There comes a moment in the journey of becoming yourself when the question is no longer, who am I beneath the mask? The deeper question becomes this: am I willing to live as the person I know myself to be? Because understanding yourself, that's important. Becoming aware of the roles you've played, the expectations you've carried, the ways you've learned to adapt, that's powerful work. But awareness is only the beginning. Eventually, the journey asks something more of us. It asks, will you live in alignment with what you know is true? And that's where things get real, not dramatic, not loud, but real. Because living from your true self isn't about reinventing yourself. It isn't about transformation. It's about remembering who you were before the expectations, before the roles, before the mask became necessary. And then, slowly, learning how to live from that place. That's what today's conversation is about, living from your true self. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Soul Talk podcast. I am Marybeth Hrim. I'm a therapist, I'm a coach, I'm a runner, and someone who deeply believes that wellness happens when the mind, body, and spirit begin working together again. And this podcast is part of the Living Unmasked series, where we explore the roles we've carried, the identities we've outgrown, and the quiet work of reconnecting with who we truly are. And before we begin, if these conversations resonate with you, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss upcoming episodes and also daily guided meditations that support this journey. All right, let's take a collective breath together, and we'll dig in and begin. So the moment when awareness arrives, see, at some point in life, most of us begin to notice something. We noticed that we've been living in certain roles. Maybe you've been the strong one, the dependable one, the helper, the fixer, the one who keeps the peace. And these roles often begin for good reasons. They develop as ways of navigating life, ways of belonging, also ways of staying safe, ways of meeting expectations that were placed on us long before we fully understood ourselves. But eventually, something begins to feel different. The role that once fit begins to feel tight. The version of yourself that once worked no longer feels like the whole truth. And that's when awareness begins. Because you start to notice moments when you say yes, but your body quietly says no. You notice conversations where you feel yourself shrinking. You notice patterns that once felt automatic, but now feel misaligned. This isn't failure. This is awakening. It's the beginning of seeing yourself more clearly. Because there's a quiet self beneath the rules. When we begin to loosen the mask, something interesting happens. We begin to encounter a quieter voice inside, not the loud voice of expectation, not the voice that tells us who we should be, but something softer, something steady, a deeper knowing. Some people call it intuition. Some call it inner wisdom. Some call it the authentic self. Whatever language we use, it's the part of you that's always known what feels true. The part that notices when something doesn't quite fit. The part that senses when you are living in alignment and when you're not. But hearing that voice is one thing. Living from it is something else entirely. So why can authenticity feel uncomfortable? So it's a word that's been thrown around quite often. So authenticity sounds beautiful when we talk about it, right? But living authentically can feel very uncomfortable at first because authenticity changes dynamics. When you begin living from your true self, you might start saying things you never said before. You might stop overextending yourself. You might choose different priorities. You might step away from roles that once defined you. And sometimes the people around us were more comfortable with the version of us that fit the system or their system. Not because they're bad people, but because that version of us kept everything predictable. So when you begin showing up differently, there may be moments where you question yourself. There may be moments where you wonder, am I making things harder than they need to be? Should I just go back to the way things were? But the truth is, once you begin to see yourself more clearly, it becomes very difficult to pretend you haven't. See, in my own life, movement has always been a teacher. As running has taught me a lot about alignment. When you're running and your stride is in rhythm, something interesting happens. Your body finds a natural flow. Your breathing settles. Your movement feels almost effortless. But when your form is off, when something is misaligned and you're not feeling well, you feel it quickly because the run becomes heavier, becomes harder, and it's more forced. Life can feel the same way. When we live out of alignment with ourselves, everything feels harder than it needs to be. But when we begin to live from what is true for us, something will shift. And it's not perfection. It's certainly not ease every moment, but a sense of internal steadiness. You are no longer fighting yourself because your body is a compass. And one of the things that I've learned in both therapy and athletics is that the body often recognizes truth before the mind fully understands it. Your body knows. It knows when something feels right, and it knows when something feels off. You can feel it in your breath. You can feel it in your shoulders and the tension of your chest, or the sense of calm that comes when something is aligned. Living unmasked means learning to listen to those signals, to treat the body not as something to override, but as something to trust. Because your body carries wisdom. It remembers what alignment feels like. And so authenticity should be practiced in small moments. Now, one of the biggest misconceptions about authenticity is that it requires this traumatic life change, this big transformation. No. But most of the time, authentic living happens in very small moments. It happens when you tell the truth in a conversation, when you honor your need to rest, when you set a boundary that protects your energy, when you allow yourself to take up space. As these moments may feel small, but over time, they change the way you experience your own life. Because each time you choose alignment, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. And that's the most important relationship that you will ever have in your life, is the relationship that you have with yourself. Because you begin to trust your own voice, and then eventually the courage to live honestly. So living from your true self requires courage. It's not the loud kind, but the quiet kind. The courage to pause before saying yes. The courage to acknowledge what you actually feel. The courage to allow your life to reflect your values instead of expectations from others. This kind of courage doesn't appear overnight. It grows through practice. See, this is a practice. Authenticity, living unmasked, it's all a practice. It's a day-to-day practice. So through reflection, through learning to listen to that quiet voice inside. So here's a question for you. So I want to offer you a reflection today. Not a challenge. It's just a question. Where in your life are you ready to live a little more honestly? Maybe it's a boundary. Maybe it's a hard conversation. Maybe it's a decision you've been quietly thinking about for a long time. Authenticity doesn't require perfection. It simply asks for honesty. And honesty begins with awareness. The goal of living unmasked has never been to remove every mask overnight. Impossible. The goal is something much more compassionate than that. It's about learning. It's about learning to notice the mask. What am I wearing today? And then slowly choosing not to rely on it as often. It's about remembering the self beneath the roles and giving that self more space to live. A little more each day. That's it. It's a practice every single day. And before we close today, I want to remind you of something. You don't have to become someone new. That's not going to happen. You don't have to reinvent your entire life. Most of the time, the real work is simply returning to yourself, listening more carefully, living more honestly, allowing your life to reflect who you truly are. And that process unfolds over time. Doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen 30 days or less, or it's one choice, one moment, one step at a time. If this conversation resonated with you, I invite you to please subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I share these weekly conversations and daily meditations designed to support this journey of living with greater awareness and alignment. And this week in the Living Unmasked series, the meditation will guide you through practices on standing in your truth, trusting your inner compass, allowing your life to reflect the self you know yourself to be. So I want to thank you so much for listening today, and thank you for being here. Until next time, I'm Marybeth Hrim.